Welcome back. The revolutionary FAR Overhaul is underway to reform the federal acquisition regulation. The Office of Federal Procurement Policy and the FAR Council are leading the effort. One of the architects of the overhaul is Larry Allen. He's Associate Administrator for the Office of Government-Wide Policy at the General Services Administration. Larry, welcome. Thanks for joining me. Where have you come so far? Where are you today, and where are you headed on the FAR Overhaul?
Francis, one of the things I'm proudest of with this revolutionary FAR Overhaul process is just how quickly the team has been able to move. We are actively engaged with over 2/3 of the federal acquisition regulations right now. And what we've done so far is work on things like acquisition planning, things like market research, things that are foundational to government acquisition. Where we're going next is we're going to be looking at things like commercial item acquisition. We're going to be looking at small businesses and the important role they play in acquisition. And we're going to be looking more at services. We've already started to look at services a little bit more, but we're going to have a very busy late summer and early fall.
Are there changes that you think have been fairly significant that maybe the community hasn't paid as much attention to as you expected?
Well, not every change that we make is revolutionary, although overall it's definitely a revolutionary FAR overhaul.
Yes.
So there are some things that are quiet, but I think some of the things that we're looking at in terms of emphasizing market research, making acquisition more than just something that's a transactional enterprise, where you are actually looking to do something beyond a tactical level buy, where you're actually looking at the strategy that's going to meet your agency. That's one of the things that we're really trying to drive in with this, as well as changing the culture to get to that business support role that we always want acquisition to play.
Your FAR Council member, Carla Smith-Jackson, was on the show not too long ago. Recently announced she's retiring, but before she did so, she joined me to talk about her piece and NASA's piece of the FAR Overhaul. How did you decide who was going to pay attention to what and who was going to work on what when you parceled out the work for the FAR Overhaul?
That's a great question, and really some of the FAR lends itself to self-sorting. All the things with major systems acquisitions went to the Department of Defense. A lot of the cost plus work went to the Department of Defense. The science and technology parts went to NASA, and because there's always limited bandwidth, they also help GSA out with some of the commercial item acquisition and some of the foundational things that maybe don't have an obvious home. But it's been a very proactive process, one where each group, even if each group takes the lead, other people in the group always review that work to make sure that the end product is what we want it to be.
Now, you knew a ton about the FAR before you went to GSA. Were there things about the FAR that you've learned personally in this process that either you didn't know or didn't remember that came to mind as this process has played out?
Well, you know, Francis, I've been in this business for a long time, and when you've been in it for a long time, things kind of just seep in and they become normative to you. So I think one of the things that's really brought me up here is the plain language thrust of what we're doing. I, like a lot of people, have gotten into the jargon. I know what a cost plus is. I know what a CPFF and all of the acronyms, but we're trying to get away from that so that it doesn't take 30 some odd years of specialization to understand the rules and get to that plain language part of it.
What is going to be different in the life of a contracting officer after the FAR Overhaul than it is today? How will that person be able to do the job better because of the changes that you and your colleagues are implementing?
Well, it should be easier on a couple of different levels, Francis. First of all, there will be significantly fewer rules that govern acquisitions, particularly commercial item acquisitions, and a major thrust of this initiative is to return the government to a preference for commercial item acquisition first before we go and build our own types of solutions. So from that perspective, it should be fewer rules, making the process easier, hopefully attracting more competition from companies that may not have wanted to participate under the old regime. But the other part of it, Francis, is that we really want to embrace risk in the acquisition workforce. That's not really something we've talked a lot about, or if we do, nobody really wants to take risk. But I think risk is essential. We need to have contracting officers use the freedoms that we're going to give them. Use those new tools so that you are driving the desired outcomes. So I think it's hopefully will also be a cultural shift where we get to people who say, you know, it says I can do this and I'm going to do it, and not worry about too much about what the rules used to say.
The cultural piece, though, has been difficult in this area for a very long time. I mean, you and I talked not too long ago about the Mythbusters campaign that Dan Gordon implemented. That had to be 10 years ago, 12 years ago, maybe longer.
Right.
And that, I think he would even admit that effort struggled to take hold and change people's minds and change the way people did business. What do you think it will take for folks to understand that they can do the things that they're now going to be able to do?
Well, I think a couple of things. First of all, you have to tell the acquisition community, if you're a senior leader in your agency or a supervisor, that if they make an innovative decision, you're going to support them. And they need to know that you've got their back, so to speak, so that they are encouraged to take that risk. I think right now there's a lot of concern about, you know, what happens if I do this and I mess it up? People are going to come down on me. Well, we need to make that okay. Not everything's going to be perfect. We don't want to waste taxpayer dollars, but we do want to make sure that we're using the freedoms and the flexibilities that we're giving acquisition officials. So I think that's one part of it. I think another part of it is that we need to have a trained acquisition workforce that feels comfortable with these rules, Francis, so that they are not seeing these things for the first time when they're trying to do an acquisition. And that's one of the reasons I've been very happy to see the Federal Acquisition Institute and the Defense Acquisition University being an integrated part of this revolutionary FAR overhaul. It's going to help us get that culture change that makes this successful.
All right, a lot more there that I want to cover, so you stay here and we'll come back in just a moment. You can read more about the FAR overhaul on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. More with Larry Allen when FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. Welcome back. The goal of the revolutionary FAR overhaul the federal government's undertaking is, quote, faster acquisitions, greater competition, and better results. That's according to language on acquisition.gov. Larry Allen of GSA is back to continue the discussion. We talked a little bit during the break, Larry, about the fact that the FAR overhaul is not happening in a vacuum. It's not off to the side. It's integrated into what's happening with OneGov. It's integrated into what's happening with transactional data reporting and a lot of other pieces of what's going on. How does the overhaul fit into all of the things that the agency is doing regarding acquisition?
Well, you're exactly right, Francis. The revolutionary FAR overhaul is the macro level undertaking to get rid of regulations and right-size the rules, enhance competition, while still making sure that we're protecting taxpayer dollars and bringing accountability and transparency into the acquisition process. So I don't want anybody to think we're creating the wild, wild west out here, but you know, it is integrated in, and it has lots of parts. One part is certainly going to be the agency supplemental acquisition rules, and if you look at GSA, that's going to be our General Services Acquisition Regulations, part of which, as you alluded to, manages the Multiple Award Schedules program, which is an over $50 billion a year commercial item acquisition program. And we're seeing that spur changes. You mentioned transactional data reporting. That has been one of two lanes that contractors can use to obtain a schedule contract, the other being the traditional lane with the price reductions clause. Well, Francis, what we're doing at GSA is getting rid of the price reductions clause essentially by expanding transactional data reporting out across the program. We're already well underway with that. The next batch is going to be complex services that we shift over to the transactional data reporting format. But as we do that, It's going to be data that industry provides and the market research that determines pricing on the schedules program, and not the price reductions clause, which has really outlived its usefulness in a marketplace that has dynamic pricing like the commercial market does today.
And TDR, I think, is in an interesting spot. I had Irv Kohler, former GSA guy, on the FedGov Today podcast recently, and he said TDR has really the agency's hit a critical mass where the data has gotten really good, and there's enough of it now that COs can really use it to make decisions and see what the right price for things really is now.
Well, that's right, Francis. TDR has now been in place for a number of years, I think at least 7 or 8 years. So we've had time to gather data. We've had the time to increase the amount of data that we collect as GSA, not just because we want to load industry up, but because that type of information is useful. It helps us understand the markets that we're doing business in better, helps us negotiate for fair and reasonable pricing, and it really has become something that is very useful, and it will have some journey ahead of us when we get into exceptionally complex services, but our team has said they're up to the challenge, and my office will certainly be there to support them in that. So looking forward to it.
I want to go back to the overhaul itself. What's the timeline look like, in your view, to finish the work that you've started on the FAR overhaul? And will there be a point where you go, okay, it's done, or is it going to continue to be kind of a living document where you will make changes as you get feedback from industry, you get feedback from the agencies, your agency customers, from other folks inside GSA, and so on?
Francis, the idea is to make this more of a living document. I don't know that we'll ever be done with rewriting the FAR. Things change, the market changes, external market forces put pressure on the government market. So I don't know that we're ever going to have a static FAR. I don't think we ever have had a static FAR. But I do think you're going to see us in phases. The first phase is going to be coming to an end in a couple of months. And that's been one where we have issued deviations. So we bring the impact directly into the acquisition marketplace today. And then when we go through, when we're completed with phase 1, then we absolutely are going to shift gears and go out for full rulemaking, comment. We welcome people's comments already. We've gotten a significant amount of comments on acquisition.gov, and I would encourage people to share their thoughts with us on what we should be doing. But we will go out for formal rulemaking. There will be at least 1 or 2 more phases to this process. We want to make sure that we are creating an acquisition system that works well and can stand the test of time.
What's a good comment? I imagine this is great or this stinks isn't helpful. What's helpful to you and your colleagues when someone submits a comment? What makes you go, this is really helpful and this is something we should consider incorporating?
Well, I think when you look at what we're doing in the revolutionary FAR overhaul, we're looking for ideas. So, right, don't tell us what you don't, just don't tell us what you don't like. Give us some, for instances, about how to make it better. Or do we need this anymore? If not, what's the case for eliminating a particular rule or regulation? We're all in favor of looking at eliminating rules and regulations right now. So when you comment, make sure you're giving us the not this way, but that way, or have you thought about this? And, this is an example of where something in public acquisition has worked well, maybe at the state or local or even international government level. There's no end of good ideas that we can look at, but we need people to share in this process.
The FAR has gotten to what it has gotten to over the period of however many years it's existed. Is there something that you and your colleagues can do to prevent the, I guess creep is the best word to describe how it's grown over time, or is that just the nature of things with something that is a living document?
Well, I think to a certain extent it is going to be the living nature of things, because as much as we at the FAR Council want to keep an eye on acquisition rules and regulations, and we do want to do that. We also have Congress and the White House and others who definitely have executive orders come from the White House that will impact acquisition. We'll have legislation from Congress that inevitably impacts acquisition in different ways. So I think we can anticipate that will continue, and it will continue to mold what the FAR looks like going forward. But in terms of non-statutory or non-EO driven accreted levels, Francis, that's something we'd really like to prevent from happening.
All right, we have about 30 seconds left. I went back and checked in the anticipation of this conversation. My first interview with you was in 2008, talking about all the same stuff, and you have said over the years basically all of the things that you advised GSA to do, all of the things that you're talking about now. What's that like to sit inside the building now and see the things that you've advocated for to make contracting better starting to come to fruition?
Well, that's one of the things that really brought me into GSA, is the opportunity to drive change. I've been in this business for a while, and this was an opportunity to really either put up or shut up. And you know me, Francis, I wasn't going to shut up.
No, that's true.
So this is a really terrific opportunity for me to have the impact that we want to have and get some important work done, hopefully save the taxpayers some money, reduce government overhead, and create a more efficient acquisition process.
It's great to have you here, Larry. Thanks for joining me
Thanks,
today.
Francis.